Hello, ni hao, aloha, hola. Bienvenidos a Colombia 4.0. El encuentro que potencia la innovación en nuestro país y nos marca el camino hacia el futuro. Soy su asistente robótico, y tengo el honor de guiarlos durante este evento, donde el talento y la tecnología se encuentran para hacer historia. Disfruta de este espacio, y descubre cómo vibramos con creatividad. Es momento de explorar. Desde la inteligencia artificial, hasta los videojuegos, la robótica, y mucho más. Juntos trazaremos la ruta de los ecosistemas digitales hacia el propósito de transformación, para potenciar la vida. Recuérdalo, en Colombia 4.0, no hay límites para la imaginación. Es la hora de conectar, aprender y expandir los horizontes de las ideas. Que cada charla, experiencia y conexión nos inspire a ser motores de cambio para el país. Comencemos esta aventura, para las mentes creativas. Bienvenidos al encuentro de los ecosistemas de innovación digital. Colombia 4.0. Somos Ministerio TIC.
Muy bien, somos Colombia 4.0 y por supuesto Ministerio TIC. Es un placer de verdad tenerlos hoy acá. ¿Cómo la pasaron? Cuenten de verdad. ¿Bien? Esa es la actitud. Veo por acá caras de satisfacción, de alegría. Qué bueno que hayan podido disfrutar estos 2 días de tecnología, 2 días de Colombia 4.0 con conferencistas, panelistas, también expositores que han venido pues a impregnarnos de tecnología, por supuesto lo que más nos gusta. Gracias también a las personas que a esta hora están conectadas a través de la página web www.col40.co y también a través de las redes sociales del Ministerio TIC. Este fue el encuentro de ecosistemas entonces de innovación digital Colombia 4.0 edición 2024. Los 2 días que se han realizado 30 y 31 de octubre. Y yo quiero contarles que pues tuvimos un relacionamiento muy importante con diferentes sectores, estuvimos también por supuesto con panelistas de diferentes países y con ustedes que fueron los protagonistas que vivieron esto en vivo e en directo y disfrutaron estos 2 días. Y hoy vamos entonces con este cierre a cerrar con broche de oro y yo quiero darle paso al viceministro de Transformación Digital, el señor Belfort García, y también a María Lucía Flores, directora de Economía Digital del Ministerio TIC, que se encuentran con nosotros. Vice, María, bienvenidos, gracias por acompañarnos y gracias por regalarnos este gran evento de verdad de transformación digital.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Buenas tardes a todos. Bueno, todo tiene un principio y todo tiene un final. Llegamos al cierre de esta edición de Colombia 4.0, edición 2024. En la cultura hindú, las cosas no van en forma lineal, las cosas van en forma de ciclos. Para nosotros, en la cultura occidental, hay un pasado, un presente y un futuro, es algo lineal. La cultura hindú es un ciclo y queremos que ese ciclo de Colombia 4.0 podamos, lo que vivimos ahora y estamos haciendo el cierre de todas esas actividades. Ya mañana para nosotros comienza el nuevo ciclo y preparar la versión 2025. Aquí tenemos a nuestra directora.
Dice, sí, así es, estamos muy contentos porque como usted dice, cerramos esta edición 2024, pero eso es solamente el abrebocas de lo que vendrá también en 2025, pero yo quiero recapitular aquí uno de los momentos o algunos de los momentos más importantes de este espacio en esta edición especial de Colombia 4.0 que es Ecosistemas de Innovación Digital. ¿Y por qué lo llamamos de esta manera? como bien les contó el ministro Mauricio Liscano al principio de este evento, hicimos un ejercicio muy juicioso de revisar cómo podíamos potenciar las capacidades de producción tecnológica desde los territorios a partir de sus capacidades productivas. Y producto de ese ejercicio identificamos que hay arenas como agrotech, turismo tech, comercio tech, salud tech, que son fundamentales y que en donde tenemos todas las potencialidades para realmente generar tecnología, no solo ser consumidores, sino, muy importante, generar tecnología. Y eso fue lo que vimos acá, los habilitadores para poder llevar a cabo ese desarrollo tecnológico. ¿Qué habilitadores vimos, Vice? Vimos temas de talento y en esta edición de Colombia 4.0 tuvimus Talentsoft 4.0, un espacio en donde se encontraron más de 200 potenciales trabajadores con más de 50 industrias de la TI. Se llevaron a cabo más de 740 conexiones entre estas empresas y estos potenciales empleados de las mismas. ¿Por qué? Porque estamos convencidos que la educación, estamos convencidos que el talento está aquí en el país y que tenemos con qué generar todo lo que el sector productivo está necesitando para efectivamente poder generar, potenciar todas sus capacidades. ¿Qué más tuvimos en esta edición de Colombia 4.0? Tuvimos un encuentro muy importante, el encuentro de clústeres con Sinergia TIC. Y aquí, Vice, decirles a todos los asistentes que tuvimos a más de 65 personas entre secretarios TIC, presidentes de cámaras de comercio, presidentes de clúster, directores de clúster TIC, universidades que son articuladoras en temas tecnológicos en los departamentos y se mostraron maravillados realmente porque a pesar que hay ejercicios ya existentes en los departamentos de consolidación, pues esa es la primera vez que todos ellos se encuentran y se dieron cuenta de que esas necesidades que ellos habían determinado, que habían evidenciado de manera territorial, la comparten con otros territorios y que pueden generar efectivamente eso, sinergias a través de Sinergia Fest. Fue justamente ese espacio en donde pudieron consolidar los esfuerzos, las conexiones. Creamos un grupo que seguramente dará mucho de qué hablar porque son esas articulaciones, esas alianzas las que generan ese poder multiplicador que estamos buscando. Tuvimos a través del detonante internacionalización y de nuestro aliado ProColombia la rueda de negocios donde firmamos o consolidamos ventas spot por más de $500.000 entre más de 28 empresas pymes de todo el territorio nacional y 3 empresas internacionales que se mostraron interesadas por los productos tecnológicos de la industria digital que tenemos que ofrecerles. Así que con este balance de las actividades que realizamos en materia de consolidación de ecosistemas, sin dejar de lado, por supuesto, los más de 200 conferencistas que tuvimos, de estos 80 internacionales de 15 diferentes países, hablando de temáticas como inteligencia artificial, animación, videojuegos, edutech, todas las arenas que teníamos presentes en este espacio. Realmente creo que salimos con un acervo de conocimiento mucho más grande, con unas ganas de generar producción tecnológica, de consolidar ecosistemas, de hacer país y de convertir a Colombia en una potencia digital. Pero esto hice y todos los presentes no hubiera sido posible sin el equipo que desde hace varios meses está trabajando arduamente en este ejercicio. Por supuesto, nuestros aliados, que ya los pudieron ver en pantalla, tuvimos cerca de 70 aliados, sponsors, que participaron de diferentes maneras, que se sumaron a esta iniciativa, que saben el poder que tiene Colombia 4.0, pero esto no habría sido posible, sin duda, sin el equipo del Ministerio de las TIC, sin el equipo de Corferias, que permitieron este despliegue tecnológico de primer nivel que hicieron de este encuentro el más importante en Latinoamérica. Así que quisiera invitarlos a que suban al escenario para una foto y para que todos los que están aquí presentes pues puedan verlos y puedan darles el agradecimiento que merecen.
Un agradecimiento a todos y cada uno del equipo. Los eventos, lo que se realiza en Mintir lo hacen las personas. Una felicitación a todo el equipo, a todas las entidades que de una u otra manera nos apoyaron. Contamos con todos ustedes, a los asistentes también, les agradecemos su presencia, a los que están vía conexión, vía streaming, también. Este equipo crece y crece y hace posible todo esto.
Pero nos avisan cuando ya estemos todos para la… para el chis de Colombia 4.0, ¿cierto? Bueno, nos avisan, hay muchas cámaras. ¿A dónde vemos? Muchísimas gracias, un aplauso. Bravo. Mil gracias, de verdad, muchas gracias por todo el trabajo.
¿Cómo es que?
Audrey Tang.
Bien, venimos ahora para la siguiente conferencia. Invitamos a Audrey Tang que nos acompañe. Es la conferencia de cierre. Ella es quien ha desarrollado elementos sobre ciudadanía digital, sobre cómo expandir el tema de la democracia y lo digital, que la tecnología sea un instrumento para ser más ciudadanos, para poder participar en las decisiones de gobierno. Entonces, con ustedes los dejo. Audrey, la invitamos.
Global freedom has eroded for the 18th consecutive year.
Audrey Tang, what is your greatest hope for democracy across the globe?
That people see democracy as a social technology, something that people can construct together, that they can improve in the here and now. We can code up political systems.
The Sunflower Movement was a real turning point for Taiwan's democracy.
When the Sunflower Movement happened, I said to my colleague, I have to leave now. Democracy needs me. I brought a very long cable for internet connection. I live streamed through Twitter. Everybody saw it is possible for democracy to evolve, to come up with novel policies simply by asking the people, what should we do together? I was born with a heart defect, and one day I just fainted. I woke up in a hospital, and they told me the hole in my heart has grown. I could die. This awareness that everything can be reset tomorrow reminds me of Taiwanese democracy. We can't lose our democracy just with a couple missiles.
I think there's a lot that the world can learn from Taiwan. The US is running on a 250-year-old operating system. There is a strong desire to move beyond this and properly rethink from first principles. What would democracy in the 21st century actually look like?
We can make the government more open to the public. It'll be easier for people to access the data, to analyze it, transparency.
Audrey has created the opportunity to make Taiwan the most exciting constitutional democracy in the world.
I think it's a very critical moment. China really wants to invade Taiwan.
You're sitting on a place that is the flashpoint if there's going to be World War III. And yet there's calm in the eye of the hurricane. And that calm, I think, emanates from all that Audrey's done.
We can become co-creators of our democratic system, reconfiguring society in a way that is more transparent, more inclusive, more fair.
I'm really honored to be here
and share with you this story. That was a 3-minute trailer of a 21-minute movie that was just premiered in the Woodstock Festival. It will be generally available online. And the story that was told is also in this book called Plurality, which is in the public domain. So feel free to download it from plurality.net. My name is Audrey Tang. I'm currently Taiwan's cyber ambassador, and I served as a digital minister for 7.5 years. And as you saw in the trailer movie, back in 2014, Taiwan did not actually have a very functioning digital democracy. Back in 2014, the approval rate, the trust of people to the government, to the democratic administration, was at 9%, not very high. Taiwan has 23 million people, and that means whatever the government does, like 20 million people is against that, or at least not supporting that. And it was at the height of polarization. But unlike pretty much any other place, we did not succumb to the polarization or the anger or the outrage that was around the time of 2014 taking over the world. In fact, we demonstrated that we can turn the antisocial corners of social media into something that is more like a demonstration, not just a protest, which is against something, but a demo, which is for something, and something that is an alternative to the existing systems. And by 2020, we rebuilt the trust, so the trust level became 70% or more. And so in the span of 6 years, we rebuilt the political system, starting with the Occupy movement in the Sunflower Movement, March 2014. As you saw from the trailer, people were not very happy at the time about how the government was handling a trade negotiation and so on. But the difference between that movement and pretty much any other Occupy movement is that we see ourselves as demonstrators. So we occupied the parliament peacefully, non-violently, for 3 weeks. And anybody, 500,000 people on the street and many more online, can just come to the occupied parliament or the streets nearby and find out exactly how does the trade deal affects them. And they can choose one or the more of the citizen assemblies that was having this constant conversation, deliberation over the occupied parliament and live stream or participate online. And using facilitated conversations, every day we agree on something more, we publish that, and then every day we delve into some of the details. And after 3 weeks, it was very rare that the Speaker of the Parliament at the time, Wang Jinping, agreed the demand, the coherent demands of the occupiers. So it's a very rare occupier that ended up in a success. By the end of that year, 2014, the central government basically hired us, the civic activists, into the government as reverse mentors, people younger than 35, to advise the cabinet on how to rebuild the trust. And so the first thing that we did is to build those bridging systems, because it turns out you can, online, build such systems as the facilitated spaces offline. Whatever we did during the Occupied movement, we can also simulate that dynamic online. So for example, this is a real screenshot from 2015. At the time, we were deliberating this emerging topic called UberX. People with no professional driver license was driving and had some fights with taxis and so on. But unlike traditional social media, where it amplifies more outrage, more polarized hate or something, we built our own pro-social system so that you can see one idea from your fellow citizen, like I think insurance is important. Maybe you agree, you click agree, or you disagree. But there is no reply button, so there's no way for trolls to grow. And once you click agree or disagree, your avatar, the blue one, moves toward the people that agrees with you. But the trick here is that we only hold ourselves accountable to talk about the ideas that are bridging. That is to say, if you can come up with an idea that all the different 4 groups agree with, then that becomes the agenda for the lawmaking, for the regulation. And if you only convince people in your in-group, that is entirely fine, but it does not actually make to the final agenda. So just like what we did during the Occupy movement, after 3 weeks of conversation, people first agreed on the basic facts around UberX. And then we ask people, how do you feel about those shared facts? Some people feel angry, some people feel happy, that's all okay. But everybody is an expert in their own feelings. And once they do that, we now know how people cluster together so that the ideas that bridge those different people become to the forefront. So by the third week, we have a lot of good bridging ideas. Like it is okay to have surge pricing, charging more when there is more demand, but undercutting existing meter is not okay. To only operate in the urban area, but skipping the rural area, the cooperatives, that is not okay. Whatever app-based dispatch need to work both for the rural co-ops and the urban area, so on and so forth. So actually, if you ask people abstract question, like is this extractive, or whether it's the sharing economy, of course you never converge. But because people agree on the shared facts and feelings, they converge very quickly on a set of shared ideas. So every time we run such a bridging conversation, that was the polis system with the building report, you can see there's only 4 statements that divides people. But while the antisocial corner of social media just focus on those 4 things, actually people agree with each other, with most of their neighbors on most of the ideas most of the time. So how about just let's take those and make new laws, new regulations? And that's how, in the past few years, Uber has been a legal taxi fleet. But we also enable the local co-ops, the rural co-ops, and so on, to become their own app-based dispatch system so that everybody wins. So the lesson we learned here is that whether people hate each other, whether people are polarized, is a function of the space. It is not a function of the people. We can design pro-social systems to solve polarization. And indeed, polarization is the first kind of symptom when AI enters democracy. Because on social media, it's very, very easy for people to only measure in case of engagement. And the things that engage people more tends to be things that reinforce people's stereotype and therefore polarize more. So we focus on depolarization as our main design. And our design even influenced mainstream social media networks. For example, Twitter, when it was still called Twitter, took the same algorithm that we did with the polis people and became community nodes. So nowadays it's x.com, but community nodes is still very much alive. If you follow the recent US elections, there's a lot of very lopsided posts on x.com, and you can see community nodes attached very quickly to provide a full context. And community nodes use exactly the same idea. If people agree on a note, but only the people on the left agree and the right disagree, that note doesn't get displayed. If only people on the right agree and the left doesn't disagree, that note doesn't get displayed. It only gets displayed if it speaks broadly to both sides. So again, it promotes people to think in a way that bridges the differences. The longer the bridge it makes, the more bonus it gets. So it is a general idea of a bridging algorithm that is also now applied to YouTube, among other things. So again, feel free to look at bridging systems. Bridging dot system is a domain, and then you can use those algorithms in your design as well. So we talk about the public part of social media, but what about the private conversations, the WhatsApp groups? In Taiwan, it's called Line. It's the same, instant messaging, end-to-end encrypted. And so we work with the civic technologies community, so they can also provide community notes, even on end-to-end encrypted systems. How does it work? Well, maybe you receive a viral information or something on your family group or something, and then we partner with the instant messenger so that when you long press it, you can flag that as potential scam or spam or something. So it's just like flagging your incoming email as spam. It gets sent to this open source clearinghouse, this repository, and anybody can contribute new context to fact check or to contribute in expanding the story more. And then you can invite one of the bots that our antivirus company does that uses this Kofax database so that in your chat group, it will come back to you and say, oh, it has been clarified. This is the whole picture and so on. And what we have found is that it is not the checked facts that inoculates people's mind. It is the act of going through fact-checking, of thinking like a journalist, balancing different sources, and so on, that inoculates a young mind, so much so that we changed our curriculum back in 2019. It used to be in our curriculum, there is this idea of media literacy or digital literacy. Literacy is when you consume as an individual. And then in 2019, we replaced that with the word competence. Competence is when you co-produce, when you make something that helps other people understand the issue better. So if it is about air pollution level, then we encourage the primary schoolers to install those air boxes, sensing devices that measures the actual pollution level. It's open hardware in their communities. Or during the presidential debates, the middle schoolers are invited to real-time fact-check them and see their contribution being made on the national level, TV or live streaming, or also the COFAX network. And that really had a real change in the nature of conversation, because when the young people younger than 18 now knows that even before they turn into an adult, they can impact democracy meaningfully, then they get motivated, sometimes by their civics teachers, to start very effective petitions on our national petition platform. Some of the most impactful ones, like banning plastic straw from bubble tea takeouts, are started by people like 16-year-olds. And they also petitioned to go to school 1 hour later in the morning, because they proved using science that sleeping 1 hour more gets you better grades than studying 1 more hour. And so these very effective petitions also instilled in them a sense of being a democratic participant, a citizen, not just a child, and therefore mobilize also their parents, their grandparents, and so on. And now, because we're in the age of generative AI, the COFAX people also together trained the language models so that even when something goes trending, something goes viral, even before the first community node contributor adds context to it, already a language model can compare this trending misinformation with everything that has been cleared up before and offer a kind of critical thinking first take. And this is called pre-bunking. That is to say, making sure that people understand what kind of disinformation, what kind of rumor is coming. And again, it doesn't come from the government, it comes from the civil society. Like 2 years ago, when the first deepfake models started becoming available, I deepfaked myself, asking an actor to play me, and then push out this quite funny video of how exactly I get impersonated. And I say, you know, nowadays it takes 12 hours on a laptop, but soon it will only take 12 minutes, soon it will take 12 seconds, soon 12 milliseconds. And at that point, anyone can wear anybody else. And so understand that it is no longer about the content, you have to verify the source. So this is also pre-bunking. So this is how even this January, when there was actually deepfake videos in our leading up to our election, it did not have much effect. It in fact backfired. And nowadays, people also work with this kind of debunking material to very specifically talk people out of conspiracy theories. So you can try it out at debunkbot.com and tell it whatever conspiracy theory you believe in, and it will very quickly having a 3-round dialogue with you and let you know what kind of balanced evidence there is, and so on. So instead of saying that AI only disrupts democracy, we can only hope that there's more creators, more entrepreneurs, more social innovators that use AI to enhance the bandwidth of democracy, of the bit rate that we get exchange with each other, and shorten the latency. And so we can even use that to control some of the bad effects of social media. For example, the deepfakes are nowadays on the social media platforms. A lot of them are about scams. Sometimes you see a celebrity, maybe a video, maybe a picture on those social media platforms trying to sell you some, I don't know, crypto or investment or things like that. And this March, we used the same method to a lot of people in Taiwan to co-create new laws, new regulations when it comes to social media and the deepfakes. We sent 200,000 SMS messages to random numbers in Taiwan, to random citizens. It comes from the number 111, so they know it comes from the government. And again, it asks only one simple question. There's a lot of deepfakes on social media. What to do about it? How do you feel about it? And so again, people share their feelings. But we also ask, are you willing to spend maybe half a day, and we will pay you for your time, on an online deliberation, like a citizens' assembly? We call it an alignment assembly, to talk about how to make this issue solve better. And so a lot of people signed up, and we chose randomly 450 people that are a microcosm of the Taiwanese society. So in terms of occupation, gender, place they live, and so on, they're statistically representative. And so those 450 people came together in 45 rooms of 10 people each. There's no facilitator as an AI facilitation and real-time transcript. People can check whether they agree on something, disagree on something, and so on. And some of the very good ideas get proposed from this room, from that room, and we use language models like Talk to the City. It's a system, an open source system that can weave together those different ideas into coherent, bridging narratives. And so, for example, people say, if you get somebody like Audrey Tang posted on YouTube or on Facebook selling some cryptocurrency, for example, then that platform needs to secure the digital signature of Audrey Tang. And if they don't get the digital signature and somebody gets scammed for $1 million, then that platform, Facebook or YouTube, need to pay $1 million in liability. And then if they don't agree on this liability, they don't pay up, then we can make the connection to Facebook slower and so on. So each of those ideas are the ones from one of those rooms, and when it's pieced together, we read it back to the plenary, and we measure after deliberation, more than 85% of people participated really agreed with those ideas. And so very quickly, we run this assembly in March, and we took all the good ideas that everybody agree on, the bridging ideas, and check with the stakeholders like YouTube and Facebook, OpenAI, and Microsoft, the usual suspect. And they're like, yeah, it will be costly, but it's not technically impossible. And then we sent out the draft law in May, and it passed in July, and now it's already law. So this is how we can use AI to help facilitate democracy better, so it works at the same speed as the generative AI and other emerging technologies. It's not limited to online conversations either. This software is called Cortico.ai. It's from MIT, and people can, in their small groups, even in their religious or community or school educational gatherings, just with people you trust, have a listening session and talk about whatever issue that you feel that you want to move the needle. And then what the software does is that it can anonymize any particular speaker, but anything that resonates with a small group can be transferred to some other groups, to talk further. And finally, the global kind of sense-making report gets analyzed and sent to the decision makers, to the members of parliament, and say, oh, this is what the people want collectively. And again, this can be done in a way that is very low cost, and that can be run just on your phone or on our local laptop. And so we're now taking this idea to a new level. As you may know, TikTok is something that the US government, the US Congress, said that before the transition of the administration in the US, TikTok US need to be sold to a team from the US or be banned from the US. And so I'm now helping Project Liberty to put up a bid to buy TikTok US, but without the recommendation algorithm. The recommendation algorithm, first, is not for sale, but also, more importantly, it is what's called a collective trap. People usually are not very happy about the quality of mental health in the recommendation algorithm, but yet people cannot quit. Last year, there was a study that says to make an undergraduate student in the US quit TikTok, you have to pay them $59 a month. They suffer a lot. However, if there is a way to make everybody quit TikTok, they're willing to pay you $30 a month. So this is a typical kind of lose-lose situation. Nobody wants to move out first because the one move out first suffer from the network effects, peer pressure. But if everybody migrates, then nobody loses, everybody wins. So what we want is to give back the voice, the choice, and the stake so that everybody can curate differently. We can make sure that the default sorting algorithm is a bridge-making one. And there's also now research from Stanford that shows if you show people only the most bridge-making content, people still spend the same hours engaged on the platform. So you're not losing on the advertisement revenue or whatever, but people report much better quality of life if it's sorting based on bridge-making algorithm. So from the police decisions about Uber to community notes to collaborative fact-checking, perhaps it is possible to turn something that is much more antisocial into something that is more pro-social. So this is what we're now checking with the people's bid. So before I conclude my talk and move to the Q&A, I want to share with you my job description. Back in 2016, when I first became Taiwan's digital minister, Taiwan did not have a digital minister before, so the HR asked me to write my job description. And it just happens that in Taiwan, in Mandarin, 数位 means both digital and also plural. So I was the digital minister, but also the minister for plurality. And so my job description goes like this. When we see the Internet of Things, let's make it an Internet of beings. When we see virtual reality, let's make it a shared reality. When we see machine learning, let's make it collaborative learning. When we see user experience, let's make it about human experience. And whenever we hear that a singularity is near, let's always remember the plurality is here. Thank you. Now, I'm told that we have like a 6:15 for questions. Anyone wants to ask some questions? Okay. Anyone want to give the microphone to people who put up their hands? We have, 25 minutes, so it should be good. Yes.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I'm very inspired by this vision of the future and the present and what you've accomplished in Taiwan. So first, I want to congratulate you and the people of Taiwan. It's amazing. I'm from Venezuela, so I have lost my democracy, and I would like to get it back. So what do you... I mean, Colombia is still a democracy, thank God, and there's a lot of countries in the region that are still here and where democracy is still kind of lingering, but I also worry that we might lose it. And the US election is just around the corner, so I have a lot of concerns, but I want to work for it. Like I want to, and I'm a technologist, I like these things, I would like to get involved in projects. What is the best way for us to get involved? Is it to go like the political route and try to get elected? Is it to like work on these projects, some of these open source projects? I guess everyone has a different version of their path, but curious to hear your thoughts on all of this.
Thank you, that's a great question. Yeah, I think we need to together have a new narrative that says it's not that democracy only leads to polarization. It's not that democracy only leads to chaos. Democracy only leads to lack of trust. We need to build smaller systems, like in Finland. Nowadays, they're also using Polis, this bridge-making system on national level, but for a very long time, they only tried this on city councils, like small communities. And the commitment they make is not that it become national regulation, like our alignment assemblies, but just that whatever people manage to agree on in that town, in the city council, is read before city council meetings. So you can do that, right? It is not difficult. It's not a lot of commitment. But then it shows people that we can manage to agree on common values despite our ideological differences, even in the small scale. So my suggestion is indeed work on the bridge systems, on open source, using those ideas in your products and so on, but also engage in your communities. In Taiwan, next February, we're going to help host the RightsCon. And the RightsCon is about using digital tools to amplify the mobilizers, the organizers, the people who work even beyond their home, because some of them cannot return to their home, in a way that still keeps the communities together using digital means. So feel free to attend RightsCon and communicate with all the different communities that rallies around this idea that democracy can deliver with the help of technology. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, gracias. Mi nombre es Ana Félix Romero Aranzazu.
Sorry, just a second.
Okay. ¿Cuál puede ser el aporte digital para la democracia de las mujeres en Colombia entendiendo la región y el país de donde vienes. No soy feminista, pero soy mujer, pienso sesuda. Gracias.
Audrey,
Yes.
Do you get the translation or? Like,
No, I just got to the point where what could be contributions.
Yes, like what's the share of digital participation of women in democracy? I guess is kind of like a broad question, or like the participation of women, yes, in democracy with the digital.
In Taiwan?
Yes.
Yeah, in our parliament, I think women is 45%, 46%, so not too bad, still not Nordic level, but still very close to 50%. And we also made sure, in addition to gender, we also have a good mix of the urban and the rural and also indigenous participation as well. Because in Taiwan, we make sure that broadband is a human right. So no matter whether you work in a remote place or whether you work primarily on care economy and so on, like no matter where you are, you're guaranteed to have broadband connection good enough for this kind of video conferencing for just like $13-14 per month for unlimited data. And then we have digital opportunity centers as well to make sure that people of different genders, of different occupation, of different age brackets and so on can also get upskilled when it comes to digital competence. So I do take your point that we need to make sure that inclusion is the most important part, because without inclusion, this will become another kind of self-selected area for people to have expressed themselves. So we need to bring those participation to the people, not asking them to just go to this website. In fact, in Taiwan, when I was a minister, I regularly tour around Taiwan to get wherever people have a petition or whether people have an idea and so on. It's us to go to them. It is not for them to go to us in Taipei.
Okay, this is a question about you, TikTok, when you say the original version and the future American version and the different the algorithm. And I would like to know if you include, or maybe if you are going to request that, like include Latin American area or areas, or just is split with America and China, and nobody knows what is going to happen with the rest of the world, like including Latin America.
Yeah, thank you. Very good question. The idea of the people's bid is to make TikTok a decentralized social system. So nowadays, there are already decentralized social systems like MeWe turning into decentralized social network, like Blue Sky, like Mastodon, and like Meta's Threads.net recently joined also the Fediverse, the Mastodon. And so the idea is that if the people's bid goes through, TikTok will bridge into this decentralized social system so that you can view TikTok content without having to download TikTok. And it's like podcast. You can post on Spotify or on some podcast platform, but any other podcast listener can also listen to it without downloading the same app. Or on email, maybe you use Gmail, maybe I use Proton, it doesn't matter, right? We can still email each other. So the idea of People's Bid is to bring interoperability into TikTok so that it becomes a race to the top. What kind of curation, what kind of recommendation suits the user best, suits the creator best. It's not trapped into the same interface forever. So to your question, in places that currently ban TikTok, for example, India and so on, because it's decentralized social system, then people can use any of the clients to the new TikTok to download and to participate and so on. So it become like a commons, an infrastructure. It is not something that is geo-fenced in the US only. That's the idea. Hope that answers your question.
Pregunta. Acá. Si tuviera el derecho de elegir dónde tributar, ¿qué lugar elegiría para destinar sus tributos?
Can somebody translate? Yeah, because that there's a lot of noise in the. It works now. Okay. Like to help translate? Great, thank you. Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
si tuviera el derecho de elegir dónde tributar, ¿qué lugar elegiría destinar sus tributos?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think the idea of taxation is that taxation goes with representation, right? Nothing about us without us. So ideally, for people who have the choice, people would want to pay tax to the kind of government where their voice is included in how the tax is used. And I understand that there's a lot of ways to participate. It's not just running for office and so on, but also participatory budgeting, participatory priority setting, petitions, and so on. So the more that the government offers a way for people's voice and choice to enter into how to use those taxes, and naturally the trust between the people and the government will be higher. But it's always that I say that to give no trust is to get no trust, is a very old Taoist saying. So the government need to trust the citizens first before some of the citizens trust back. The government cannot say, oh, the citizens have to blindly trust us. Doesn't work like this, which is why we worked on transparency, like publishing all the meeting transcripts of lobbyists' visit to my office, journalists, the meetings I chair. You can find on sayit.archive.tw for the past almost 10 years now. Every meeting that I was into was fully transcribed and published so that people understand the why and how of how the tax money is being spent instead of just the result of the tax money. And so when people see that the government trusts the people, some of the people eventually trust back. And so the government that trusts the people most, I think, will have the best relationship with the taxpayers. And also it helps that we have e-petitions from people who complain that the tax filing was too painful. And so we got them together and had a workshop. And so now filing tax in Taiwan, instead of taking half an hour, it now just takes 3 minutes or something. And so again, co-creating the tax filing experience may also be a way to get people to pay tax at least more willingly. Hope that answered your question. The follow-up question?
Okay, Audrey, thank you. Here I am.
Yeah, hi.
I have a question according to artificial intelligence. So asking you about how is artificial intelligence contributing, or it's going to contribute to a positive political and economical panorama, because it has been used for non-good things in social media and stuff. So how it's going to contribute to something good for every one of us?
Thank you, that's great. I always say that AI for me should mean assistive intelligence. Assistive technology like this eyeglass is something that enhance human dignity, not decimate human autonomy. It makes us see each other more clearly, but it's not like intercepting all the photons, sending it to the cloud, as some advertisement push it back to my eyes, right? So something that is steerable, that is transparent, the glass is very transparent, and something that is very steerable in the sense of if it breaks, you should be able to fix it, right? So if it is an open source model, or if it is a model that you can fine tune on your own, and you see something wrong, then you can correct that wrong. But if it is a proprietary model and there's no way to fine tune or to steer it, then if it goes bad, then you cannot help but feel that it is something centralizing, like authoritarian intelligence. So a lot of our work nowadays is to work with all the AI labs to make sure at least the steerability, the explainability tools, the tools to align AI to what people want, at least these tools should be open source. Regardless of which models themselves are open source, at least these tools should be in the common. And once we have the tools to align our own models, whether through alignment assembly or whether through some democratic input, building our own community models and so on, then people will feel, oh, it is really assisting our community. And so a lot of the work nowadays is to make sure that people at the edge, even without a lot of investment in data centers, can, in an energy efficient way, to distill those models and also to steer those models. And that is exactly how we're going to make sure that AI benefits all instead of just a select few. Thank you.
Hi.
Yes.
Well, I have a question. I have a similar question regarding the question that he made, but regarding blockchain technology, as you were talking about decentralization, you know, a blockchain is a decentralization and decentralized database and a way of interact and give trust to that blockchain. So, what would you think that is the role of blockchain in democracy, not just for business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a blockchain to me is like a public notary that resists censorship. So nobody can censor anything if it's on blockchain. So like in Taiwan, I mentioned that primary schoolers and their teachers using air boxes to measure air quality, like pollution level. And they did so because they did not fully trust the environmental agency from the central government of Taiwan to measure pollution levels. So they want to keep the government's number in check. Now, this is a great use of blockchain. And indeed, they did use distributed ledger, I think it was called IOTA back in the day, to store those values. Because the government can write to it, the civil society can write to it, anyone can write to it, but nobody can erase other people's numbers. So over time, you can see the trend and see whether it is from the mobile sources like cars and motorcycles, or whether it's from some overseas sources, or whether it's from some plants and so on. And it really affected the idea of citizen science so that people can do their own analysis and find out what are the polluters. And it really also increased our environment agency's ability to go after the polluters in real time. But without this kind of mutual trust on a blockchain or a distributed ledger system, people would not want to contribute to the government database if they don't trust the government. So in a case where multiple writers don't trust each other and need a public notary that over time needs independent analysis and audit and without censorship, and that is a correct use of the blockchain system. And in Taiwan, we've been using that for quite some time. But you will also note that air pollution or water pollution level or wind or whatever has no personal data, it has no privacy concerns. Because it's on blockchain, it's very difficult to take down. So you need, if you're going to process anything related to the personal issues or personal data, you need zero knowledge techniques to ensure that what's written on chain is just a snapshot or a hash or a fingerprint of that data and not the real personal data itself. So it needs both the zero knowledge technologies and the blockchain to complete each other.
I think...
Sorry. Yes. I think we have 7 more minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Here?
Which one?
Thank you, Audrey. Well, according to your experience, what recommendations or advices could you give to us in a country as Colombia to start building these digital democratic communities? Because considering that our country is a populated country, 50 million people, is different maybe than Taiwan, and also it's not that easy to get to these stages where political actors that take the decisions and have the power to build this relation to participate as citizens in the decision making. What would you recommend to us to start building these digital communities?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. As I mentioned, there's a sequence in a focused conversation, a facilitation. First, facts, and then feelings about the facts, and then the ideas to tackle those feelings, and finally, decisions. In my experience, jumping to ideas or decisions does not work. You have to first build the community that agree on the shared facts, which is why in many countries, the first thing that they tried from the Taiwan experience is the collaborative fact-checking system. Sometimes they work with journalists, sometimes they work with the existing social dialogue networks, but the idea is that anyone, including very young people or very old people, can contribute to dispel some myth, some rumor, or some conspiracy theory, and so on. Because really, nobody wants to be the person in their family chat group that spreads those disinformation. If they have a way to contribute to the context building, usually people do so regardless of their political affiliations. So the CoFacts project has been spread to Thailand and to some other projects. So I would encourage you to look into collaborative fact-checking, maybe as the first step, but also in your community, if there are existing ways for people to come to decision together, maybe like a community assembly or things like that, also think about how to use AI to make it more transparent, or to make the transcription or the translation or the summarization more effective. That works too. The broad listening tools have recently been used in Japan. There was a young sci-fi writer, AI developer, 33-year-old Takahiro Ano-san, who ran for the Tokyo governor with no political backing and got the most votes ever for people under 40 years old. And what he did is that he has an AI avatar, like a VTuber of himself, and anybody can call into a hotline to talk with his chatbot. But he has all those ideas that people contribute, and more than 15,000 of them, and use the open source tool Talk to the City to visualize, to find the bridges between people's ideas, and then he just run with that platform. So this idea of broad listening is really taking off, whether you want to run for office or whether you just want to have your local community agree on something. I think you can try those bridge-making tools as well. So whether it's about the facts or the feelings, it's easier to start than ideas or decisions. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Or here, like to the right, or
buenas tardes.
Well, I think here. Yes. Well, I was just wondering if, well, here in specifically Bogota, the local government tried to implement a strategy for kind of reaching the more population in terms of how to participate in the planning of the city. And that was through WhatsApp, for example. But some of the traditional groups that participate and that dialogue with the government said things like, well, there are like Colombians that live in the States and are giving their opinion about local issues. So I was wondering, like, how could we implement these changes that are very necessary in order to democratize, like, decision making in a good way, like how to implement it with, or what are the best practices that could be transferred to, so that we can exercise that kind of transformation in a good way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is a really good question. Like in our national petition platform, you have to prove that you're a resident or a citizen of Taiwan, and the way you do that is through a locally registered SMS number, and then you can do a OTP, one-time passcode, to show that you're in Taiwan, for example. And now we're also working on the decentralized ID infrastructure that lets people to prove that without revealing anything else, not even their phone number, or people can prove that they live in a region without disclosing their address, prove they are in the age bracket of this to this without revealing their birthday, and so on. So nowadays, there's a lot of zero-knowledge tool chain now that lets people disclose things without going all the way to disclose full personal information. I understand Buenos Aires just last week rolled out Quark ID for this particular purpose. And so my encouragement is to not get things perfect the first try. Sometimes you will get some people overseas with the local number, but then always investigate in the open source tools, the zero-knowledge, decentralized, verifiable credential tools, so that you can narrow down the participation, but without over-collecting personal information. Because if people feel that their personal information are being abused or over-collected, then you lose the trust and they will not participate in future processes. So making sure that this absolute privacy is held through open source tools, that is very important if you want to start like local scale participatory budgeting and so on, in those lower stake situations, you can afford to try many times before all of Bogota or all of the entire nation. Hope that answers your question. So,
Tenemos tiempo para una última pregunta. So
One
we
last
have time for
question?
one last question.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Aló.
Muy buenas
Ok,
tardes.
Esta es mi pregunta. Ok.
Gracias.
Mi pregunta es esta.
Bueno, primero las damas, entonces. Sigue, por favor.
Ok. ¿Cómo podemos cuidar la democracia con una mala popularidad dirigida para que las minorías o las personas en condiciones de vulnerabilidad puedan estar representadas en el gobierno de un Estado y que la inteligencia artificial no tenga sesgos?
So the question is, how can we take care of democracy with bad popularity already, and that is directed for minority groups and people that is in vulnerability conditions, and to ensure that they can be represented in the government, and also in the state, with artificial intelligence and without bias?
Yeah, this is a great question. So in Taiwan, I mentioned that we have reverse mentors, people younger than 35 that have a cabinet position as advisor to a cabinet member, but they're still like cabinet level advisors. So structurally, including people who were maybe just 17-year-old, 16-year-old into the top level decision-making body, that works because they then advocate for people around their age. But for people even younger, like 10 years old, 9 years old, that becomes harder. So we also have ideas that's called helping the helpers, making sure that people who facilitate, for example, urban planning or city planning, to get the children into a stage where they can see some future design, future planning, but from their point of view, to make it easier for them to express their ideas and then curate those ideas to translate it into policy language. I think AI can really help not just enabling small children, but by extension also maybe animals, maybe planetary systems like entire rivers or forests. I understand nowadays many countries are having laws or even constitutional protection to get a seat in the decision making for natural systems or for animals and so on. So I think a lot of work can be done by first having an advocate, like a human advocate, but with a co-pilot that shows the relevant data and information like a dashboard. And eventually, with assistive AI, we can get more and more into that advocate, but still maintain that a human is in the loop to check the understanding, how it's used in the open source interpretation, and so on, and eventually get more than human systems into the seat of the board. But for many people, starting with youth and then with children participation is easier to understand because they can see it's part of education. And then once we got that right and got all the like indigenous nations, the minority languages right, and then move on to more than human systems. But I really like that because I used to be the Minister for Social Innovation, and I always argued that if we leave someone behind, then it is not plural. If it's not plural, then it's not worthy of digital. Plurality means that no matter how large the difference is, we need to build a bridge that leaves no one behind. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Audrey. We're
Muchas
really...
gracias. Sí, perdón. Muy buenas tardes. Muchas gracias por su exposición. Quiero hacer una pregunta que puede resultar controversial. La ciencia por sí se considera que no es democrática, en razón que se aplica para bien o para mal.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to make a question that may result controversial at some point, but science may have no boundaries in ethics in the terms of that it may result for good or for wrong. And
En razón que la ciencia, como decía, se puede aplicar para bien o para mal, como ocurrió con la aplicación o el bombardeo que hizo Estados Unidos con la bomba atómica en Nagasaki y en Hiroshima, Igualmente, pues pensamos que la inteligencia artificial es, por cierto, por supuesto, parte de la ciencia, como una tecnología. ¿Cómo podríamos utilizar esa inteligencia artificial para hacer una democracia transparente? Si tenemos en algunas repúblicas, como el caso nuestra, con prácticas clientelistas y corruptas, que efectivamente hacen que tengan efectos sobre la paz y sobre la equidad social. Muchas gracias.
And so, as we see in that science could be used for wrong or for bad, we saw it in the United States attack to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So in republics in which corruption and bad management is evident, like in our country or many other countries, how would we then use this artificial intelligence for good and not for wrong? Thank you.
Yeah, so even during the Cold War, when the US and Russia was developing the nuclear arsenal, still they shared the science about nuclear safety. They also shared the know-how of how to keep accidents from happening when researching nuclear, either weapon or power. So I agree with you that there's use and there is abuse, but we can also see that not all technologies are dual use. During the COVID, if you have an innovation that can very quickly make N95 masks, there's no weaponized use for that sort of technology. It's clearly just defense and not dual use. And so we need to figure out which part of AI, which part of emerging technology is non-dual use, is defense only. For example, the kind of auditing tools that we talked about, getting people's input about how to steer or explain AI, that is not dual use. It is only used for transparency and so on. And once we identify the part of emerging technology that's not dual use, we can commit ourselves into contributing to it in a way that's open source, in a way that is scientific, that allows for free duplication. Because it's not dual use, there's no worry about proliferation for that sort of things. And so the same goes for like the blockchain and so on. Of course, blockchain can be used for bad. It could be used for, I don't know, money laundering or scamming or whatever. But it's also used for accountability, for transparency, for auditability. The trick is to identify which part of that pipeline is non-dual use. It's not likely to be abused, and then just commit ourselves to it. I hope it answered your question.
Thanks a lot, Audrey, for your presentation. It was really inspiring. I think we have a lot to learn from you. Muchas gracias a todos por su presencia, pero esto no es el final. Los invitamos muy especialmente a que nos acompañen al concierto del Filmo, The Film Music Orchestra, que está aquí al frente en la Plaza de Banderas, y adicionalmente vamos a estar acompañados de un show de drones. Yo sé que está lloviendo, pero alistamos unas carpas para que no nos mojemos. Igual está escapando, así que todos muy invitados a que nos encontremos aquí afuera. Mil gracias a todos por acompañarnos en Colombia 4.0.